Tigers minus 1.5 first 5 run line plus 124.
First 5 run line, like laying like 1.5. You're an
Oh,
insane
yeah.
person.
Oh, yeah. We are back. It is September 12th, which means there's Thursday night football. But more importantly, it is the start. We have turned the clock over to the start of week 2 in the National Football League. We've got pick'ems galore. That's why you're here. You want to attack PrizePicks Underdog DK Pick 6. That's why I'm here, is to at least facilitate what Eric Lindquist is going to tell you at Eric Lindquist, of course. So you can follow him on Twitter at ShanderBets for me. Jordan Klein is going to give you about 6 or 7 home run bets, even though this is a football show, because he can't help himself and he's red hot. Lindy, we are here. Week 2, we made it.
Yeah, we survived. I think sometimes week 1 can be a lot of survival. You try to learn as much as you humanly possibly can about who's going to be on the field, who's going to be handed the football off at the goal line, who's going to be doing this and that. And, you know, a lot of what we're doing in Pick'em is we're combining a lot of these plays together, and you have to get a couple of more things right than you typically do when you're just straight betting at a book. So we are going to be combining promos. There are promos over on PrizePicks Underdog right now that I'm seeing, and pick 6 right now. You can play up to $50 over there on Thursday Night Football and get that back if it doesn't win. I mean, we're going to be attacking some of these spots and trying to talk a little game theory as we go along, cover a little bit more week 2, what we learned from week 1, and try to apply it and make us some money. But how was your week 1?
Really bad. And I say this as somebody who, for the last 4 years, I think 3 since we've been doing this here, it's been fantastic. Like week 1 has been my highest volume card. It's been my best performing card. And I came in this week and probably lost more people than gained on the tails marketplace. But look, we're bouncing back. We regroup. We have Thursday night. We'll sprinkle a little bit of knowledge and info on Thursday night, but this is a week 2 show for you out there. So if you're here, hit the thumbs up button. We appreciate that. We'll get you in on Stokastic and tell you about what's going on. A couple of crazy deals here across the board. But let's just look at this Thursday night. Now, I don't know how you want to attack it. I think for us, it's probably better to just look at it as a block and say, all right, what jumps out? Maybe there's line shopping here in which we can take advantage of something better on Underdog versus PrizePicks, what have you. But as far as the game is concerned, it's going to be hot. It's Miami. Expect that. Hotter in Buffalo than Buffalo, pardon me. There's going to be some rain, or at least strong possibility of which. And then you've got maybe concerns on both sides of the ball, defensively speaking. With all of that said, this is where we can take some advantage here on the pick'em market, knowing that you can get a little bit of a break compared to like what the regular books who continue to tighten offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is probably a good thing to talk about correlation. If the game is in much better conditions than you expect, or than the lines are indicating, if we put 4 or 5 players together, we're looking for like maximum correlation. And that can be one way that you can work past like the fact that you're getting 10x, 25x. Like it's a lot easier to correlate a game where you get that portion of it right, or you're just right about one thing. I do this a lot more, I would say, in NBA when there's a player that could prospectively be out, and I'll stack the other 5 players, or 5 players from that team and 1 player or the main player on the other side, and just hoping that that game stays close. I mean, there's just ways you can correlate where they're still not going to diminish your returns. Now, the one thing that has happened on pick'em sites is they have started clamping down on people like me who have been doing correlation for so very, very long. However, when you start talking about 2 players that aren't on the same team, they're not necessarily going to downgrade you. And that's where I want to look at Josh Allen, Tyreek Hill, or potentially like, you know, a running back and a quarterback on the other side have some pretty strong correlation. I mean, you can look at the R metrics on a lot of different guys and like who are the most correlated. Obviously, a quarterback to a pass catcher is the most correlation you can run into, but you still have skill position players on the other side. So is there a piece that we can put along with like a Josh Allen rushing touchdown with like a Tyreek Hill rushing plus receiving touchdown? I see that's at 0.5. And, you know, I think that's probably fair. I might have seen minus 110 kind of a prevailing number at DraftKings Sportsbook. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways that we could correlate some of these pieces of the game. Is there anything that stands out to you for it?
Yeah, I like Tyreek Hill. I like targeting Hill in this game, and I understand he's going to be the heavy chalk, clearly, and especially with what happened last week. you're going to have even more people talking about, the broadcast, right, is going to be all over that. You're going to see still shots of that shit last week down there at the stadium. So I think there's going to be, anytime you get more eyes on somebody, there's going to be more public just looking at it from a money or betting standpoint. But here's the thing. If you really wanted to look at, maybe the rain's somewhat of a mitigating factor, not really for Hill, but if you want to look at the best place to attack this Buffalo defense, is it not vertically? Is it not downfield? Just send. Who is the better vertical threat in the NFL right now than Hill? Probably not anybody, at least that you would go pound for pound. So absolutely. And he's definitely not somebody that I think is just relegated, if I can use that term, to big plays from your own 20 or 30. He's definitely used creatively, especially in the red zone, to use that speed for spacing. So I think Hill, there's an advantage there for Hill to target if you want to look at scoring, or if you just want to look at general receiving yards. You're the fantasy guy, so I'll defer to you here if there's any value at that 20. But even at receiving, 95.5, I know that you have a little bit there. Receptions might be a little tough because of the game flow of the game. Rush, receiving, TDs, and receiving yards would be for me.
All right, so let's talk about what they're going to diminish for correlation and what they're not. And sometimes this comes with just experimentation. Sometimes, I've done this long enough that I kind of know the ways around it. So bear with me, because this is going to be a little bit of the secret sauce. Let's go to fantasy score Jordan Klein. Jordan Klein behind the virtual glass, putting everything in for us. And I'm sure we're going to be tailing a little bit of this, because he is a pick'em extraordinaire now. That is for sure. But Tua Tagovailoa fantasy score. Tyreek Hill fantasy score, Jalen Waddle fantasy score. When you click on more for every single one of them, obviously we're going to need a player on the other side. You see how there's a little bit of a tiny pay discrepancy there. It goes from 20, you're betting 20 to win 95. It goes to 4.75x. Now that isn't egregious, because normally you're, getting 5x on a 3-pick. Underdog is the spot you want to be playing your 3-pick cards. That's kind of the tried and true method. But if you go to receiving yards and you combine it with that, and I look at Khalil Shakir and James Cook as two guys that we could potentially be looking at, they don't necessarily diminish it extra. Like Khalil Shakir, you add 40.5 receiving yards to that card. For a power play 4 flex, it goes to 4 correct at 9.5x. It's barely any downgrade for correlation. Now, as you start adding pieces, it can get lower and lower, because again, we're going towards a different thing. But if you go to the fantasy score and then you combine it with receiving yards, or if you correlate all the receiving yards and you sprinkle in a fantasy score, it does the same thing as far as like giving you that great correlation, but it doesn't diminish your payout the same way as if you stay in one market. So you need to have multiple markets that you're mixing in. So whether you're using our projections at Stokastic and the PrizePicks Underdog optimizers, or whether you are building these out by hand on your phone, as in like, I think this game shoots out, doesn't matter. You want to correlate your cards, and you don't want to be getting massive pay bumps or pay down bumps to be placing them. So go to multiple markets. That's the number one way in football that I found to work around the correlation dip.
All right. So on PrizePicks, it's a great find and way to manipulate that in your favor, our favor now, as you drop that gem here for us, my friend. Yep. So anything else that you wanted to look at for Thursday Night Football, if it is underdog or even pick six, which I know you are just crushing that area, that realm there. And maybe some of it is just finding the difference of 1.5 receiving yards or 2 carries or something that you can work in your favor that also flows with how the game plays out.
So let's go to pick six, because this is where correlation does not downgrade you at all in football. We can combine anybody, anywhere, with anything. It's beautiful. Like
flawless. That's
in
fantastic.
MLB, exactly. In MLB, they're downgrading you for being able to put pitcher up against a hitter because it's extreme correlation. Like that's going to be the most correlated thing. You're going to have, the fantasy score of 4 or 5 hitters correlate directly to the performance of the opposing pitcher. But for this, we can do whatever we want. And I do think Tyreek Hill sitting at 94.5 receiving yards now. That is a pretty noticeable dip. He's sitting at 96.5.
There you go.
You're sitting at 96.5 on Underdog. You're sitting with Tyreek Hill at 95.5 there. The lowest number you can get on Tyreek Hill is at pick six at 94.5. And obviously this is peer-to-peer, so we got to find some different pieces to go with it. I'm looking at Curtis Samuel. less than 18.5 receiving yards. This is something that my buddy DK DFS put up on Twitter earlier in the week, and I think it was a really, really sharp observation. There aren't a lot of ways to be able to short him in the pick'em markets anymore that are like off, like it's gotten much more efficient. You had 12.5, 13.5 is like his longest reception. He's a short ADOT guy. He only played 28% of snaps. And now you're going into a hostile game environment, both teams 1-0, and it's going to be raining. Maybe Curtis Samuel ends up on the field more, but they love trying to get to 12 with Dawson Knox on the field if they can. And Dalton Schultz is going to be on the field ad nauseum. So something that can kind of break up the correlation if I'm going to be taking some mores on Tyreek Hill and I'm looking for like a larger pay bump. I like the less on Curtis Samuel because I believe his numbers too, as you start comparing them to other places around the marketplace, are sitting 17.5. So 18.5, a really nice number on pick six for less on Curtis Samuel.
I throw, before we kind of move on here and look at the larger landscape, look at Dalton Kincaid if we can, Jordan. He's a guy that I want to target in this game overall, but I also want to make sure, as Eric said, that we're not losing any value by just rushing him in on a card on one site, knowing that, okay, wow, it's 41.5, let's say over at PrizePicks. I don't remember. I think it was a little lower, right, on PrizePicks for Kincaid. But look, he's going to be, there you go. You can start using the combo stuff over at PrizePicks. Okay, still 43.5. So we're going to get a consistent number. That's fine. Clearly, if you can play alts, right, some of these will let you play an alt at like 40 if you're going to do on that. That's fine as well. But Kincaid's just going to be targeted. We know that. He's part of this offense, especially in that soft middle. And the rain. The rain's going to open some things up. It's going to limit, I think, outside of Tyreek Hill, who is just impenetrable to anything outside of like 15 people on him at once. The rain is going to slow some stuff down. It's going to open up things for a guy like Kincaid. Clearly, I think the receptions will be there, but I'd rather go yards because I think you can get that off of 3, maybe even 4 grabs and not have to sweat out a 5 or 6 grab night. So that would be somebody I would look at in this general realm to kind of wrap up Thursday night for me.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So you guys can utilize that. PrizePicks Underdog, pick 6. We are still shopping for the best odds. We're simply, trying to utilize correlation and not get downgraded for it. And I repeat, on pick 6 is the spot where if you have an inkling that you just want to jam a game stack of less or jam a game stack of more, there are no rules. It is lawless land, and the payout bumps have been spectacular over there. I had a $5 card that ended up going 78x on Sunday and kind of bailed me out of a couple of other bad cards on pick 6. I mean, 1 is really all it will take in some of these spots because, these markets, people love going to passing yards. They love going to total touchdowns where there's only Tyreek Hill listed. If you can be on the other side of those or just simply build out other correlated cards and have those two fail, you're going to see massive pace spikes over on pick 6. And it's probably even better than what you think it could potentially be.
Mike's right, Stokastic. Rain can't stop the cheetah there, but the cops, not even the cops just slowed him down.
Yeah,
that's all that was. This is the old adage. Who coined that phrase? You can't stop them. You can only hope to contain them. Do you remember?
That was Stuart Scott.
No, I think it goes back even.
Really?
I think it's one. I think it
he
might
made
be
it pop
Olbermann.
Culture. Stuart Scott made it pop culture. You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. Cooler than the other side of the pillow.
No, wait. You're putting in multiple phrases here, and I think you are misappropriating one thing to Stu. I believe this is an older one. I think this goes back to Olbermann. I think this was one of those earlier, maybe like Olbermann and Kilborn. Now, if I'm wrong, I will gladly say I'm wrong.
Origin of saying it's a basketball term. It was used for Wilt Chamberlain at the time. Catchphrases, you can say. Dan Patrick. Okay. There you go. It was ESPN. I was close. That feels good.
Well, of course you were close because I said Sports Center and you said Stuart Scott. Like I gave you the realm to work in. Boy, it's like me hitting a parlay saying like, well, I gave you a pat on the back.
And you thought your kids were going to be the most annoying part of your day.
No. I knew this would be. So let's look at Sunday if we can. Everybody in my house is sick. It's awful. Let's look at Sunday, but nobody's like sick, like they can't move. It's
okay, good.
So Sunday, do you have an anchor play right now? And I don't know if you do that. I don't know. I heard it being discussed in pick'em circles, and I thought, all right, well, have you had something already that you've looked at? It's what, Thursday now, so there's no excuse. We have everything up for Sunday, and we have some pretty strong opportunities to take advantage of across these three. So we could start on an app. We can start and say, oh, let's just look at PrizePicks and Underdog. But I'm sure there's a play that you've already looked at, identified, and probably started to build with.
Yeah, there's a couple of them actually. So I do Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. I'll break down everything on the Odd Chopper channel, breaking down all of that goodness. But from a pick'em perspective, there are a couple of game stacks that on pick six stand out massively to me right from the get-go. You can utilize this on PrizePicks and Underdog here as well. On Underdog, we're going to talk about a couple of the 3-pick cards. Actually, you know what? Because we haven't covered Underdog yet, let's jump over there because I'll talk about the one card that I built out and just go play by play on him. Let me pull this up here. All right. The first one is Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon higher than 68.5 rushing yards. I'm just making sure that I have all of this here because Joe Mixon was on the field an eternal amount. He's at 66.5 here. I played this at a worse number and I didn't really care. I don't see why it's coming in less against a Bears defense that, they obviously were the side that won that football game, special teams and defense. Caleb Williams was just absolutely flat out atrocious. I don't know what to make of 1 week. I don't want to overemphasize anything. I think Caleb Williams is going to be just fine here. But what I especially think is that, you're looking at Sunday Night Football, Joe Mixon being on the field like 80-90% of the time. The guy got unbelievable touches, and this is the best offensive line that he's probably had in his NFL career. I mean, going to Cincinnati 2-3 years ago, they had an okay offensive line by some of those metrics, but Joe Mixon was on the field ad nauseum. He also had more broken tackles in a game than any other game that he had played in since 2022. He also had more yards after contact than any game that he had played in since 2022. This might be just a new situation breeds new confidence. They obviously like him. They obviously brought him in for a reason, and that is to help take some of the load off of CJ Stroud in this passing game. And I think he did more than an admirable job. And now on Sunday night, hosting Chicago, I love Joe Mixon higher than 66.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You mentioned just the usage and how much he was on the field there. That's a constant. I don't think that changes unless the game flow itself, right? Like going into each week, why would that plan change? Even if you are facing a tougher opponent, which you're not in this case, to say like, oh my goodness, that's a deterrent. That's a great find right there with Mixon. And it's something to keep an eye on, right? To say, all right, how long before that adjusts? How long each week can you get ahead of this? Because from last week to this week, there probably should have been even more adjustment to your point, because you wouldn't have played it if it bumped up even more.
Yep, absolutely. Right. Now the next one, I'm curious what you think about this, and then I'll let you round it out.
Go ahead.
I'm kind of torn between two. There's Cortland Sutton, who's sitting down around 42.5 receiving yards. I'm going to actually go to another running back, Isaiah Pacheco, 64.5 rushing yards. I don't see how we have him at just 64.5 rushing yards. I'm looking at all of my projections right now, and I've got him north of 70. I can tell you that. 74.5 rushing yards I've got him. So I've got a 10-yard disparity between this. And obviously, we got to beat the VIG. When you're building out a 3-pick card on Underdog, just put -122. Put that in the back of your mind. -122. That is the payout that you have to exceed to be profitable over the course of these plays. So if you see something listed at a sharp sportsbook at -130, you could probably blindly play that and just throw it into a card and you're probably positive EV. But from a projection standpoint, I don't see how 64.5 is the number that we're landing on against Cincinnati. Cincinnati could not stop a very, very obvious, very, very run-centric New England offense. I mean, it was just down their throats repeatedly. You're coming off of the worst loss, for Cincinnati gets out of the gate slow. It feels like every single year, but Isaiah Pacheco, 15 rushing attempts that was, only 45 yards on the ground, but this is where you have to look at it and say, all right, what happened week one? What was the game flow? What were they doing? There were some massive big plays by Xavier Worthy that basically took them off the field instantly. Rashee Rice in the middle of the field was getting peppered, sure, but Pacheco, when it comes to rushing downs, when it comes to early down work, he is going to be the guy. I don't think he's going to be a 3-yard per carry guy. I think he's going to be closer to that 4 echelon, especially in an offense that you cannot sell out to stop the run, because obviously Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and all these other glorious humans exist, but in Arrowhead, Isaiah Pacheco against this Cincinnati defense that couldn't stop a nosebleed. I find this to be an absolutely ridiculous number. I mean, it was 170 rushing yards with Jacoby Brissett as your passing guy. Now it's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, we're talking the worst potential run defense in all of football in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I agree. And that's not changing, I think, either this week, especially going up against this just new dynamic, not new like this year, but newer dynamic for Andy Reid, who, and I've seen it, is just so averse to running and sticking to that. But when you have a physical kid like Pacheco that you can rely on in a successful system, absolutely, why not? So I've got two guys that I'm looking at. If you're just popping in, see some new faces in the chat here. Appreciate you being here. Hit that thumbs up button. Of course, we want you to be a part of what we're doing here at Stokastic. What is the most famous phrase to ever come out from ESPN? Like, I'll let you go multiple ways. I'll let you go as far as an announcer, like maybe it's Gary Thorne doing a hockey game. Maybe it's during an event. Maybe it's during a show. Back, which that's not the answer. So don't anybody dare say that. Or maybe it's like Sports Center, right? Yeah. So you tell me, what's the most famous phrase to ever come out from an ESPN personality?
I mean, Stuart Scott, cooler than the other side of the pillow is the first one that comes to my mind. That's definitely in the top three. So off the top of the head, off the top of the dome, that's the first one that I think of.
Do you want to go top three, Mount Rushmore, or
let's go Mount Rushmore. Let's do a Mount Rushmore. Stuart Scott is up there. I mean, and now that we've found out that Dan Patrick,
these aren't anchors, by the way. Yeah. These are just phrases.
Correct. And gotcha. But Stuart Scott, it kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, he was the biggest personality, I think, for Sports Center in the heyday of it, and obviously gone too soon. And then cooler than the other side of the pillow, they started bringing in popular catchphrases. They allowed, more jargon on nightly primetime sports coverage. I mean, I was just obsessed. I watched 3-4 Sports Centers a day growing up forever. It would be cooler than the other side of the pillow.
Diaper Dandy.
Trying to think of like another one
he's an elevator man.
Definitely not that one. That is not going on the Mount Rushmore.
Trust me. Yeah. I wouldn't say anything. No knock on him, but I wouldn't say anything Vital. I
no soup for you. That's definitely in there too. No soup for you.
Who is that?
No soup for you.
I feel like we're missing a Craig Kilborn reference. For you. We'll let the chat. Yeah, Booyah is good, but I go cooler than the other side of the pillow, I think.
Yeah,
was the number one for me. We'll see what more people in the chat can populate this with.
Oh, it was actually originally from Seinfeld. No soup for you. And then
that's the soup Nazi. Right.
Yeah. But then it became something that, Stuart Scott as well. There you go.
Okay. So I'm telling you, I think we're missing something from Craig Kilborn. I don't know why, but I think we are. All right, so I'm going to give you.
We'll think of it.
Go two ways here. You can keep the 51.5 if you want, or if you wanted to add a little bit more to this card, we can push Lamar Jackson's rushing yards to 59.5 for a 1.24x return. And look, I understand what happened last week, and people are expecting some sort of regression to the mean with Derrick Henry getting more carries, et cetera, et cetera. But I told you guys last week, and I'm going to sound like a broken record until they prove me wrong. This offensive line is a disaster. There are 3 new guys on there. There's a coach who has no idea what he's doing. He's a proven record for not knowing what the hell he's doing. How can a successful organization like Baltimore bring in someone like that is beyond me. But that's not changing overnight. It sure as hell is not changing this week against the Kansas City Chiefs, against Steve Spagnuolo. They will blitz him. They will pressure him. The pocket will break down. Lamar will run. We had, 8 rushing attempts in the first half alone last week. It's not a game plan. This is now out of necessity that Lamar is going to be moving here. So I looked at his rushing yards first as a guy that I would want to target. Again, you want to keep that at the 51.5. That's fine with me. I think we can get, honestly, somewhere in the 60s against the Chiefs, again, simply out of volume.
I don't hate that at all. Again, three rushing yards components, and I'm just fine with all of them. I don't think that they're a disaster. I mean, they're the biggest favorites on the board for week 2. I mean, it's not that they're bad. It's just that Kansas City's really, really good. I think the offensive line will perform better when you're not trying to deal with the Kansas City pass rush. Makari and Stanley are going to be all right. I mean, they need something. Andrew Voorhees, he was brutality there for week one, but he's also a 7th rounder from last year out of USC. There wasn't a ton that was expected of him there. He's just a fill-in guy. I think the same thing with I cannot pronounce his name, but the guy who had a million false starts, Daniel Falole, is that correct? Out of Minnesota?
Yeah, I think it is.
If you watch that game, he had a penalty, I felt like, every 5 seconds. I mean, that was just egregious watching that guy. He was a disaster, but I'm with you. Lamar Jackson is out there. He's going to run. He got paid. And as soon as he got paid, I think he's just fine running around the field. After last year, he won an MVP for a reason, and it isn't just the fact that he can be a functional throwing quarterback. It is the special sauce, which is him getting it done with his legs. And don't forget the Raiders. They are a stone cold disaster on the defensive side, specifically those linebackers outside of Robert Spillane, who's going to be pretty good. I think we saw him make drastic improvements in Vegas in 2023, but yeah, I can't advocate enough for Lamar Jackson positives.
Do you want to move around here? You want to stay with Underdog, or want to go back to like pick 6?
Yeah, let's go to PrizePicks too, because I know that people like that there. We have the profit boost. There's a 30% profit boost on Underdog. There is also the CeeDee Lamb free square, so utilize that on Underdog. PrizePicks apparently is just going to keep rolling out Caleb Williams. He might go under 0.5 passing yards based on what we saw last time out, but I'll still ride with more there. I think that that's still a 99.9% free square. So we're going to click on that and build out a card that way. On PrizePicks, I generally am going towards 5 and 6 pick cards. So when we're building out over here, I'm looking for a larger portfolio to bring that VIG down because there's fixed payouts. So we want to be getting to the 5 for the 10x. We want to be getting to 6. So we'll be ensembling a couple of plays. You can go to the Pick'em Builder if you're looking for a play or two, and that's just strictly market-based approach right now. But from a projection standpoint, I've got a couple of things that actually stand out. We could get a little bit spicier over here on PrizePicks, considering you're getting that free square. We could really shoot for some upside alongside it.
All right, so we're on PrizePicks now. Do we have anything built as of right this second? And we need to build, what, a 5Xer for Sunday. Is that the only thing? It's just our free card, right?
Yep. So we get a Caleb Williams free square, and we're looking to combine it with 4 of our own plays, potentially 5. Yep.
So you start. We'll move away from Thursday. This is a Sunday only affair here for those watching. And again, just to clarify something in the chat, I knew where No Soup for You came from, but when I was asking that to Eric, it was which Sports Center personality took that.
Right.
Don't go deep into the Seinfeld trivia here. I fall asleep to that show every night. So let's look here. Boy, you want to just fade Bryce Young?
Kind of.
No, where do you want to start here? I've got one guy I want to look at, but I want to get you a couple of plays in here first before I ruin our card.
I want to see what his line is at now, but it was going to be Jaden Daniels. I'm trying to see what is his passing plus rushing plus receiving, because this is the fun part about, I think, PrizePicks as well. There's markets that you're able to invest in there that aren't necessarily available. You can't find passing plus rushing plus receiving together as a portfolio anywhere else, but you can get 1.5 of them from Jaden Daniels against whatever we just saw the frickin' New York Giants do. I mean, they are such a train wreck. There aren't even really words for it. Now, Jaden Daniels is plus 150 to rush a touchdown over at ESPN. So we're comparing this to sports books and having an idea of like where the market's at. Plus 130, kind of the prevailing number. Sharp books are right in that plus 140 range. But then you combine it with his passing touchdowns, which again, rushing touchdowns, passing touchdowns, receiving touchdowns. We're not worried about the receiving necessarily for him, but based on what we saw against Tampa, Washington has a atrocious defense. And if the Giants do put up points in any way, shape, or form, I mean, having Daniels push the pace in this one, this feels kind of too good to be true, because, I mean, Brian Robinson will get some goal line looks, but Jaden Daniels is going to have to do so much. And I think this is a much better spot going up against this Giants secondary than what it was last week against Tampa Bay. I think that, even with Winfield Jr. out there playing safety and roaming, with him dinged up, it's still a very, very stout secondary, I think, on the Tampa Bay side. I like Jaden Daniels getting the entire portfolio and adding them together there. Pass, rush, receiving. The guy is pretty special on the ground based on what we saw in week 1.
I'm waiting for a post at, I don't know, whatever time of the day or evening, wherever you are on the planet, following at Eric Lindquist, where the Commanders run some perverted version of the Adams Morgan special, in which Jaden Daniels catches a ball and then just trips his way to 4 yards. And that puts you over this number. And you're just like, well, TDs is not, but I mean, just like from yardage itself, right? Like he trips into the end zone and that puts you over this number. And you're just like, my God, like the likelihood of that happening, right? The non-0% chance of that. It's going to happen. At one point this year, you playing this market, although you haven't needed to find that third one in receiving, it's a great find. And like you said, you can't find it anywhere else. It's going to happen where you're going to get unnecessarily saved by that ridiculousness.
Yeah, well, we saw week 1, Patrick Mahomes did it. He caught his own ball. It's something that happens. The most famous example I think that I can remember was your boy Nick Foles doing it in the playoffs.
Philly special.
Yeah, Nick Foles did it during he caught his own his own pass in the playoffs earlier, and then they had the Philly special that was the play call towards the end of the first half. Yep. It was wild. Twice 2 pass catches for Nick Foles in the same playoffs. Wild.
God does everything. Just amazing. All right. So we've got 2 up there. Why don't you give us one more here? I'll throw one at you and then we'll close the card down.
All right. Because we have a free square, you're able to kind of shoot for a little bit of upside. And that's where, I would never recommend going to the rush plus receiving touchdowns market. But this is another way to utilize a free square. We could even take Jaden Daniels off and then just say, this is what I want to do. I just want to target this guy for a touchdown. Like Jeff Wilson today, that's somebody that I'm going to be playing on PrizePicks alongside some Caleb Williams. You can break it up. You can play up to $25, $5 increments. You could play 5 different cards and have yourself set up. But Anthony Richardson, 0.5 rushing plus receiving touchdowns for him going up against the Green Bay Packers. I mean, the Packers are in a lot of trouble having Malik Willis starting here for week 2. I don't think anybody feels inspired by what they saw during his tenure in Tennessee. Matt LaFleur is a good offensive coach, so maybe there's something that he saw in Malik Willis that he feels like he could fix. Did he fix it in 3 weeks? We'll find out, because that's basically all he's getting there. But between Anthony Richardson and Alec Pierce, both of those guys there, rushing, receiving, or rush receiving, we saw Alec Pierce just be an absolute deep threat. Exactly what I was talking about on Live Before Lock from a fantasy perspective, but I kind of like going to the Colts. I think this is kind of a sneaky spot to be invested in their touchdown spots. And then Anthony Richardson, we saw JT get in the box there in week 1. We're going to see him get some goal line looks, but Anthony Richardson against a Green Bay defense that is going to force some pressure on him. You saw your boy Jalen Hurts getting out and about. Yep. I do think we're going to see Green Bay. The main way that you're going to want to take advantage of them is getting your quarterback out and trying to move the ball that way. It was pretty effective what they were able to do with Jalen Hurts, and he's a little bit of an outlier because he's just built like a brick shed. And
sure, but Richardson can move.
Richardson can definitely move, and I think for me this is more of just like looking at how this line is flipped. Where it was before the season started with Jordan Love out there, Green Bay being favorites, to now I think most people like me are very interested in the Indy side. I think they're going to be playing ahead in this one. I think they're going to have a lot of opportunities to have short fields, considering how bad I think Malik Willis is. I want pretty much anything that has to do with Indy scoring touchdowns. So Anthony Richardson to rush one, Alec Pierce potentially. You want to get a really good price on a touchdown, just combine Caleb Williams, that free square, with them.
So I love where you are in this game. And I think there might be something that we saw last week. I don't know where you stand on this. By the way, just locked in Texas State +1 if you're interested tonight.
Oh my God! Well, that was Ben's play. I saw him post that.
Oh really? Okay. Well, I did not. I'm not subscribed to his tails, so I don't know.
You guys should subscribe to Eytan Shander's tails, please.
Me first, right? Then Ben.
Yeah.
I had an anytime last week. It was north of 3-1 for Adonai Mitchell. And I saw Anthony Richardson overthrow Adonai Mitchell wide open, two just like criminally overthrew this man for a touchdown. The third time was more Richardson's fault than Mitchell. He's open. He's getting open. He's not a focus of the opposing defenses, not yet, at least. And it's hard for me if I saw that. And granted, this is why we always bet, because you're looking at it like anybody who's in that game would look at tape, not like somebody just yelling and screaming on Twitter. It's hard for me to think they didn't see that. So there's something to that where look, I don't know if you can find him, right? Like he might be too small of a market to play as far as maybe on PrizePicks. Do we have him even on here, Jordan? Right, to be able to correlate something to that. But anyway, point being is if you can find him on the other ones, there might be something to that there. But I love where you're going here with this Colts game for sure. Yeah, I don't think you're going to find him on here. That's fine. But it was just oh no, there you go.
Let's go.
Boy, I mean, that better bump my shit up right there. That's all I'm saying.
I ain't saying she a gold digger. Yeah, Adonai Mitchell. Yeah, that's gonna add some. That's a tasty meatball. I will say, if we're gonna play Adonai Mitchell, instead of me playing Anthony Richardson to do that, what's Anthony Richardson? Well, they're not gonna have his passing touchdowns. They only have his pass yards, rushing yards, and then rush plus receiving. I would just love to get some correlation there if we could.
Right. Right. Can we do that on another app?
Yeah, we could probably take a look at not with Adonai, maybe on Underdog. I think Underdog we could probably do it.
That would be the deeper. Yeah, Dowdy's on pick 6.
Yep, let's take a look at that. By the way, we just got Lamar Jackson bumped to 52.5 rushing yards on Underdog already, so good job by you. Closing line value, that 1 yard.
51. That just seems so low. And again, like, okay, the guy could rush for 2 and people come back next week. You fucking idiot, you know what you're talking. But even those people have to be honest with themselves that 51.5 seem low.
Sure do. It's a low number. Yeah, let's go to Underdog and let's throw that in. Let's go to Adonai Mitchell first. Jordan Klein, you're doing a great job, by the way. You're so special. And then we've got Anthony Richardson and 1.3x.
Yeah, we're throwing Jordan like.
It's saying you can't, it's impacting your selection. Again, errors. It must be from 2 different teams. Locked picks must be resolved before. All right, so can we just add one other thing and then it'll be
That's
done?
it, right?
Yep, just there we go. Locked. Oh, no, they're not going to allow us to remove Richardson to unlock. So yeah, there are times that they just clamp down on the old correlation. I wonder though, could we do Anthony Richardson fantasy points with it? That would be an interesting one. Passing yards, nope. Not going to let it. That's not going to add enough correlation for it. Passing TDs. Yep. They're not going to allow the correlation of it. But we can put Adonai Mitchell 2.29x and we can combine that with the CeeDee Lamb free square and then have one other play. And there's no way that won't be positive EV with a massive payout.
Right. Okay. So that's how it works.
Yep. You always want to use those free squares, man. They are so damn important. And I hope people realize that, especially if you're not playing like $100, $200, $500 pick'em cards. Like if you're playing $5 or $10 on Underdog, you could play $1 cards. I think that there's some sharp opportunities to utilize those in like round robin type formats here and there. But the 30% profit boost that I've got here for today too, that thing is going to be very, very zesty for Sunday. So I'll probably post some cards. If you follow me at Eric Lindquist, I'm going to throw out some PrizePicks Underdog pick 6 goodies along with the video so you guys can watch this. We want to just also be able to talk through what you play the most. What kind of cards do you like to build out so that we can help you guys build better versions of them if we can.
Yeah, great point, right? And we've got a couple minutes here. Even if you've seen something that you want to throw at Lindy, if you've seen something that we just popped up over this show on Underdog PrizePicks, Pick 6, maybe you looked at a video and want to use a follow-up. This is a great platform for that too, right? Just so you know, we do short content. We do video on demand content. That's not interactive. You can leave a comment and all, but then you have to wait for Eric to wake up, and he's on the West Coast, and God knows when he'll even get back to you, if he will, right? Klein's got like 16 things for him to do. So this is the place to go. Hey, Lindy, I saw you on the video. You dropped this. What do you mean by this? Can you expound a little bit upon this? This is a great opportunity to take advantage of that as well here. So
I mean, there's some other versions that I think are actually going to be priority for him. the main thing is that if you remove, just take off Anthony Richardson quick, take off just take him off. Like I really think the best way to utilize this free square this week is to play the touchdown market, but for $5 a piece. So $5, we're going to make 5 different cards of it and utilize that, because then you're looking at the one thing and you're going to have better odds than you're getting at any sportsbook by a mile utilizing it that way. So I would be just utilizing the free square with like those are like opportunistic shots. Building out 6 plays and having a 3% expected win percentage on a free square, that's not taking advantage of it as much as I think you could. Obviously, the correlation, you basically are getting a free square, but you're looking for 5 pieces. I'd rather just make it a 6-piece correlation card where I'm utilizing the free square on something else.
All right, we got a couple more minutes here. Have we fully established cards elsewhere, or do we need to fill in?
Let's do an established card on pick 6, because this one's going to allow us to do whatever the hell we want. And I've got some cards built already. Remember, pick 6 moves now, people. So you do want to get in early on some of these numbers. But the week 1 board is set and it is glorious. They also break up the afternoon slate into its own deal. So the pick 6 cards are based, really the main slate for them is 1 p.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Pacific. So it makes it very, very clean.
Got it. So let's look at that here. Boy, Purdy was a guy that we hit. Do you have completions for Purdy? This is a market that I still want to look at. I don't know if he's right.
We're going to the Dome, baby, Minnesota. I mean, this is 19.5 completions.
See now that is fully caught on, right? On Monday night, or when
21.5, I saw.
It was 21.5. I mean, my God, come on, 21.5, right? So this is clearly now, I think at 19, in my opinion, Eric, it's probably unplayable.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty darn efficient.
I
don't forget they were able to establish the run in a way that I didn't expect. I didn't know Jordan Mason was going to be that lit, especially against a Jets defense that, again, you could get after the Jets on the ground. So I don't know why I didn't necessarily think about it that way. They kind of let you. They never blitz. They just basically sit in coverage, and then Sauce Gardner wasn't on the field for this, to the tail end. It was just so weird. It was such a weird football game.
Did you
listen?
Still
bugs me.
Did you hear the broadcast to that point about it being a weird football game and not really expecting from what you would get from Jordan? Did you hear that point? And I think Buck asked Aikman if he agreed that it just felt like Kyle Shanahan, the moxie and hubris and idiocy and bravery and all that shit combined into a melting pot, was like, I'm going to go out there and prove that no matter who is in the backfield, I can run all over anybody. Now, to be fair, you add the little nuance, which is, well, most teams should be able to run all over the Jets defense. It just happened to play out that way.
Yeah, it very much played out that way. I think you're right, though. Most people are going to be able to at some point in time. But is there, this is what I've been doing a lot on Pick 6, and this isn't special. This isn't some nuanced thing. It's harder to do with San Francisco, Minnesota, because we have the big Christian McCaffrey question mark. He didn't practice yesterday. We'll find out if he practices today, and maybe he was limited yesterday. Either way, you need to be paying attention to Friday. We're recording this on Thursday, noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. out on the West Coast right now. So we are a long way away from knowing what happens with Christian McCaffrey. So you have to use some context with it. So we'll kind of stay away from that one. We've been kind of targeting in on the Indy Green Bay one, so we'll stay away from that as well. Let's go to, I think, probably the main event of this game, or of the morning window here. We've got very limited things available to us from Tampa at Detroit. And I'm very much looking forward to this football game. I think there is a lot of potential offense that could be showing up here. And it starts with Baker Mayfield, 253.5. Let me pull up my projections, because I know that I had him higher than that. Yep, 272. So I am much higher on Baker Mayfield as far as being able to move the football. Jalen McMillan is a very good football player. We saw him at Washington alongside Rome Odunze. It kind of took some of the shine off of him at times. Him and Penix had a good rapport still, but I mean, McMillan being added to this offense is going to stretch the field, I think, as we go along. And Godwin out of the slot was just awesome. Mike Evans is an absolute god. I mean, I love putting Baker Mayfield with the combination of McMillan and Godwin in terms of receiving yards, and then having a final, because we're doing like a 4-pick one. There's no fixed payouts, so I'm happy to do this. Running it back with Jahmyr Gibbs, 26.5 receiving yards. This is a dude that is just fascinating to me, just fascinating. I don't know what to make of the Amon-Ra St. Brown stuff. We obviously saw in overtime, they just bulldozed, just established the run, but I don't know if they're going to be as successful just running David Montgomery into the back of the line of scrimmage over and over again. I don't think it'll be as successful, even though I do believe Detroit has the best offensive line in football. I think there'll be enough resistance there where Jahmyr Gibbs might end up on the field a little bit more. The hamstring injury didn't look like it was a major issue in any way, shape, or form. And Gibbs out of the backfield. I mean, this is just a guy that I think correlates nicely with that card. You play those together. You can play $1, you can play $100, you can play as much as you basically want there up to a certain point, whatever the maximum is for that pick level. And I just like correlating that game for points because we're looking at a massive total. And I think every number is just a little too low that I talked about.
Look at that. All right. We appreciate everybody here, of course. Great call on that game at the end. I think there's a lot of value here, especially in the betting world. So make sure that you are following along, both of us, in the Tails marketplace where you can find us, our plays, our picks, our subs, and everything through that in the Discord. And make sure you're following across the board here with what we have going on at Stokastic. Get a deposit match. How about that? Over at Pick 6, right? Like Lindy just gave you a winning card or two over at DK Pick 6. You might as well just jump in, get 100%.
Yeah, and Leibowitz is saying you can run against Tampa Bay if you can. I mean, obviously. Daniels, I think it's going to look really, really weird in hindsight when people play Washington and Daniels runs for a zillion yards. And he attempted like what? It was double digits. I can't remember what he had for rushing attempts, but it was stupid.
It was double.
I run it with David Montgomery. Do the opposite of what I say. Have him be your run back, because if David Montgomery puts up points and establishes the run and they are able to move it, you're going to have Tampa on the other side trying to put up points, running up the score. I like the over in that one. It's one of my favorite games on the week.
All right, everybody. Appreciate it. Make sure you thank Jordan Klein in the chat after you hit the thumbs up button. We will see you next week and go back on some winning cards, I'm sure. Lindy, anything you want to hit on the way out?
Follow my dude, Eytan and Tails. He's been doing a great job. And I especially like to see when, he tails stuff like my Jeff Wilson touchdown, my favorite play from Thursday night here. I don't know what happens with Achan. They made it sound like they're optimistic he plays. Now they're making it sound less optimistic. And now they're just hopeful that he plays. I don't know what to make of it, but I would get your Jeff Wilson dollars down now, my friends.
All right. We'll see everybody. Have a great week. This is a work week and it starts today.